Welcome back to Worth the Effort Woodworking and what's kind of become an annual shop tour edition, and it also gives me a chance to do a state of the channel address, tell you what's coming up in the 2020 and how we did in the past year. So come along, let's check things out. So as you walk in, you can see that right now I haven't got my kind of area set up because I'm doing some turning videos on a MIDI lathe. I'm not using the large professional lathes for this series, so that's how it allows me access to the whiteboard to explain stuff. I have the bandsaw already a rock and roll, and it gives me enough distance to the camera so not only can I get some background full body imagery, but I can just move it in and get some close-up fairly easily. Having my little rolling camera in this small shop setup works pretty good. Now if you go back to my 2021 video, is actually a month late, and basically this entire shop, the interior, we built in 2021. I had some shelving up and we had most of the equipment in here when I did the other one, but it can show you how this shop moves around, because all my power tools, when I'm doing flat work, they can roll over this corner and give me all this space to work with. And then normally, here's my workbench, it will be over there, and then this equipment will roll over somewhere else, and I will spread this stuff out to make it useful. Most of the time my router table stays right there. But as you can see, that gives me a lot of space to do my production work, which every day I have to do some production work before I do other stuff, just in order to keep up. And this has slowly been moving farther back and back and back because Dad is not, we don't tend to work at the same time, so it doesn't really matter if he's throwing shavings over here. A lot of the rolling tools, when I'm doing production flat work, I will roll here and cover with a blanket. And then Dad has his production area, and we will go through all these in a little bit more detail in a second. But that gives you an idea of what the 450 square feet of shop space we have for two of us working works out like. So a quick 30-second review of how we did last year, numbers wise, for those of y'all that are interested in a little behind the scenes stuff. Today we have 180,000 subs. This is the 31st, and I'm publishing this on the 1st. That represented about 36,000 subscriber growth. That's actually a little bit worse than I did in 2020. We did get 4.5 million views this year, which is a tad bit more than I did in 2020. Can't quite explain that one. But the income from the ad sales and stuff like that doubled in 2021. Now, I can't really explain the exact reason why. I think it was a combination that a lot more people were watching online, so that the ad rates went a little bit higher per video. And I also know that a couple of my major videos this year, a few of them that went somewhat viral, were more general audience, because educational woodworking content is not only a niche, but it's a niche and a niche and a niche and a niche and a niche. So there aren't a lot of people buying ads for that kind of stuff. But if you do something like a shed build or a garden build, it's more attractive to the bigger ad buyers. So I think that's one of the reasons why my income went up, which means that income's going to go down next year because we're going to be diving deep again. Last year I published about 70 videos, but a lot of those were segments of series and stuff like that, and they were a little bit quicker to make. This year I only did about 40 videos. There was just a lot of other stuff going along background, me trying to learn some new skills and stuff like that. And I'll be quite honest, after Thanksgiving, things just crashed around here, and I haven't gotten any new content out there in all of December, which is the first month I haven't had anything in many, many years. So it's kind of weird how busy I've been behind the scenes doing stuff, getting things arranged, and how little that kind of shows up on YouTube. But that's enough about how we did that last year. Would you like to see some of the new tools we bought? Starting with this lathe. I purchased this with my own money. I wanted a MIDI-sized lathe to do the educational series on, because that's more what a lot of people are starting out with. And I didn't want to, I didn't want anybody to have the excuse that he's doing it on that, so that's why I couldn't accomplish it. You can accomplish almost everything on that. Machines this size, those are just luxury items and probably specialty stuff for bigger projects. We also built a nice little stand for it to save money and be a little bit more customized for the uses we're doing. I also had some tables we built for a lot of the roll around stuff. This small bandsaw came to me for the Start Woodworking series, and I got it a lot with the idea that I would be using that in the Turning Basics series, because this is a great combination to start out with in turning. Another thing installed in the shop is we now have central dust collection everywhere. This was more of a dad project. We pulled his dust collector out of the mothballs and put it up. I had a dust collector, a roll around dust collector, but in such a tight shop with 2 people, it just didn't make sense anymore. So this stays out of everyone's way, and it works really, really good. It's one of those clear view cyclone setups. Along with that, Dad has really finished out his turning area with, you know, a cool dust setup where it moves out of the way for getting stuff in there, connected that to everything. And he's got his tools all set up, including a new vacuum pump setup, which works really, really well. And in the past week, he got him a vacuum chamber and a separate vacuum pump he didn't want to risk his really good quality one that he's using on his lathe for this. And he's experimenting with some stabilizing and epoxies and stuff like that. He did get himself a very nice vacuum chamber, or pressure pot, I'm sorry, to go along with the epoxy, as well as a way to cook it and stuff like that. I'll tell you, I'm not really interested in doing that one, but I think he'll have some exciting stuff out there. Now, some of y'all might remember last year I built a really nice table that I had as a turning station. It was on wheels, and the idea was we could keep it right here and both of us use the same grinders instead of us having different sharpening stations. That did not work out very well. So I ended up cutting that table legs off, and we set it on top of this workbench that we built for Dad using some vintage cast iron legs. And that's just a pine top that I think he got from Goodwill. The downside is I'm not going to have a 6-inch grinder, but I do have a 6-inch nitrite wheel that's going on here. The problem is that the little bushing that works with it has been on back order with Lee Valley forever. That's what that's for right there. So right now, in the future, I'll have a 6-inch wheel here for all my hand tools. We have a coarse 80 grit wheel, a medium 180 or 220, I forget, and then a really fine 600. So that should be our grinding setup for pretty much all our tools. I use stones for most of my hand tools though. I also was able to purchase a Stihl 661 and some long blades for it, and all the apparatuses I need to start milling up lumber from the logs that we get. It's not that I'm going to be making slabs for flat work tables, stuff like that. That was actually more for wood turning, because I want to be able to grab logs and do 6-inch slabs out in the field to make it easier to transport around. And then I can stack those 6-inch slabs in my backyard, seal the ends, and I don't have to process that log instantly when I get it. Because if you're going for free wood, you just kind of take it when you can get it. So if I could just slab it up and let it sit out there until I need it, that would be perfect. In the past, I had a small chainsaw. I would have to cut up the bowl blanks in the field, and then that very next day start turning green woods and then stack them to dry and stuff like that. And it really cut into scheduling and stuff. So it will just be nice to have really thick slabs in the backyard that I would have access to when I want them. And if I ever do want to make a slab table, I can. And the slabs are advantageous because as wood dries, it cracks on the ends. So if it cracks, 6 inches on each end of an 8-foot long slab, well, that entire center section is good. But if you have a bowl blank and it cracks in from the sides, you end up with a tiny bowl from a giant log, and there's just too much waste there. The other major tool investment I did was the capacity to weld. I now have the tools I would need to do most of the welding projects I would want, from a plasma cutter to a general welder to saws and that kind of stuff. I don't have any desire to do a lot of welding. It's just for my long-term goals. I need to be able to do some structural welding, you know, trailer frames, that kind of stuff. And I found that I don't really like welding. It's really dirty and hot and all that kind of stuff, but this will let me get it done. And a large portion of my year was spent learning this stuff. It's a lot harder than I thought it'd be. And then we have our storage room out back here. Dad still has plans on putting a dryer for the air tank up here. He's got a air compressor radiator and all that kind of stuff, and it's going to be a pretty cool project so that we can plumb hard lines out to our workshop for air for both the woodworking and welding, because Dad does enjoy wants to do a little bit more fancy welding stuff. And I think I'm kind of lucky, because over these past 20 years that I've been kind of more into the fine woodworking stuff, and especially over this past 12 years I've been making online content, which you've been following along, I've slowly amassed, I think, a pretty complete collection of tools. Yeah, there are a few things that I would love to upgrade someday in the future, but you know, things like my 6-inch jointer, it works perfectly fine. I cannot complain about it. I get good results on it. It would be lovely to have an aircraft carrier 12-inch jointer, but I don't really need it. And as far as, you know, my hand tool collection, stuff like that, yeah, there are a few specialty planes that would be nice to have, but I have alternative ways of doing it. So I was sitting here thinking a while back that I really don't have a lot of tools in my want list, and really I have a lot of tools that I probably ought to just give away or get rid of. Don't contact me on that kind of stuff, because I don't use them that much, and my skills that you develop, which I hopefully am teaching you, kind of compensate for them, so they're redundant and they don't work as well as just your hands and chisels and the tools we can use. So I think I'm kind of lucky that way. And this year, expanding into welding and being able to harvest better quality material straight from the tree, I'm happy. So what am I doing with all these tools? Well, in the last year's review, I kind of laid out a 5-year plan where I foresaw myself in 5 years buying an acre or two of land and building some small houses on them, using those house builds to allow me to make videos and, you know, filling them with the furniture I make and stuff like that. And that would kind of be a way to move forward. And I'm on that track. This year I laid out as a goal to at least get started on the teardrop trailer. I did sort of. Right outside the door, I've got, you know, 3 15-inch wheels and tires, axles, suspension, brakes, electrical, all that kind of stuff. I'm just saving up to buy the metal for the frame itself, and then we will be on that. And I will probably be building that trailer in the next 2 weeks. The major hiccup has been my confidence in my welding skills, because a trailer going down the road, you know, there's a safety issue, not only for you, but for other people around. And my experiences this past year learning it, you know, I've built this garden right here with a lot of these welded up things, and then there's a rack back there, little hanging stuff like that, but that's all been fairly thin metal stuff, and, you know, some of it's good, some of it's not great. I have been collecting some metal from the salvage yard. Right now I have some, I think they call those C-channels. They were structural for buildings, and then I-beams. I have about a little less than $300 in metal right here, because I buy it from the salvage yard for 25-30 cents a pound. That's a piece of an oil pipeline, which I'm going to make into something for a 3rd channel I'll be starting this year just for fun, a hobby channel. But this is thick enough that I could practice welding the thicknesses of the material I will use for the trailer. And probably in the next day or two, I'm going to start, and I'm going to turn all this into an outdoor welding table that I could build the teardrop on and make it sure everything's flat. Something I don't have a lot of money invested in, I can just leave outside to rust. But the hang up for the Teardrop trailer getting really moving forward has been my confidence level as a welder. Now, once that frame is done, the potential for really cool woodworking videos really explodes because of the design I'm taking for that teardrop. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. I'm kind of saying it's a cross between a cedar strip canoe and a timber frame barn. There's going to be lots of thick, heavy structures. We're using bent lamination for the frame, a lot like you would do for a rocking chair. And that's kind of the idea. I can use elements of that build to explain a lot of stuff that you would use elsewhere in a craft. It provides so many opportunities. Not necessarily that it's a teardrop, but when I'm done, I can use that teardrop to expand on the other goals I have in teaching education and travel and stuff like that. I can go around the country. I can go to museums. I can do deep dives into individual furniture pieces and styles and then bring that back to here to do it. It kind of goes along a saying, I know I'm bastardizing this, but if you want to find opportunities for success, you've got to be willing to do what others can't or won't and be able to do it better than if they would or could. And in our woodworking content realm, a lot of people just can't add in a travel aspect. And a lot of them, even if they go on that travel aspect, I don't think they can bring the educational side that I can. I would love to be able to visit museums and talk to docents, maybe analyze a specific style or even a specific piece of furniture, looking at the different elements and explaining how we can do it nowadays just as well as they did in the past years with our better tools and a little bit of skill development, and expand out what we've learned so far to make that kind of stuff. Maybe even bringing those ideas back and building them here along the Norm Abrams style. You know, he used to visit museums and then come back and build his version. Well, that's the kind of content that a lot of people just aren't able to do nowadays because of the travel aspect. And having that teardrop will open those kinds of things up, along with teaching opportunities and stuff like that I explained in past years. But with laying out that I didn't finish that teardrop goal for 2021, and I'm pushing it off into the beginning of 2022. The other things I talked about that I didn't get to was I really wanted to focus more on the writing side of the content, making that newsletter, updating the blog and stuff like that. But that was mainly taking advantage of the travel side, and since I didn't get there, I didn't start the newsletter. That's my bad on me. I just don't know what to put in there until I can have those travel opportunities. So that'll be coming up in 2022 once I hit the road a little bit. And I'd really like to spend about 25% of my time on the road in the future. So that brings us to what are we going to be wanting to accomplish in 2022. And if last year was a beginning of the transition, I really want to hope that 2022 will be the conclusion of the transition into the style of content that I think I can do for 5 or 6 years. You're being an online content creator, you kind of have to transform it yourself every now and then. I am never going to turn my back on the educational aspect of what I'm presenting. I think that is a valuable asset to the community. But it is going to transition more from not these semester-long courses like I'm going to be finishing up at the beginning of 2022, the turning one right after the teardrop trailer. But from there on out, it'll be more project-based to explain a concept. And my thinking is, I could spend 25, maybe even 50% of my time on the road, collaborating with other content creators, bringing their educational knowledge to the thing, going to museums, going to schools, all that kind of stuff. And then when I'm back in the shop doing a really nice hand tool project, showing people the efficiencies of working with your hands and developing the skills. And then the next video, taking that project and showing how you could do a small batch production run, because the other aspect of my image out there is as a art market retailer. So if I can go out and show you how you can make better stuff than charcuterie boards and epoxy pens and stuff like that. Really nice products that you could be proud of to sell, and do them in small batch production runs so you can have a small backstock. I think that's an area that has been neglected that we could really do well. So going forward, it would be a lot more of those project-based as a medium for content. The other thing I'm going to be doing in 2022 is, I don't want to call it a series, but it's going to be a bunch of videos on the box joint, because I think that is an entry-level joint that a lot of people don't really consider anymore now that we have pocket holes for everything. And it used to be the box joint was the way we made stuff. And I'm talking about making maybe a waterfall desk for my office using hand-cut box joints, then maybe progressing into methods where you take the wood to the tool, such as a router table or a table saw box joint for making smaller boxes or shelves for that bench. And then even progressing all the way up to doing giant floor-to-ceiling libraries using a box joint and making them so much stronger, more durable than what you're seeing out there because of the nature of the box joint. And that's a situation where you're going to be having to take a power tool to the wood, because there's no way you're building a 12-foot high box on top of a router table. So the general outline is Teardrop, finish up the Turning Basic series, start a series on the box joint, and then beginning our travel vlog adventures. And that should carry us into 2022, where I would like to build the first tiny home. Well, I hope you enjoyed this tour. There are quite a few updates from the last time. For example, I built this corner right here to house all of our portable power tools out there, and that has turned out really well. I have the chop saw, sander, scroll saw, and some other power tools up there. The upper area storage has been great, but one thing we want to do is carry that along all the way around the shop for drying areas. This area is soon to have a fold-down Murphy bed style cabinet to house my CNC. I did use a CNC mainly for letter carving and stuff like that, and that's probably what I want to do in the future. Not necessarily building entire projects, augmenting other stuff we make, but we just don't have room for storing it, and that will be a box joint project. We also have, that's going to go right here, probably a charging station going up here, and somewhere over here we will add in a sanding station. Those two will be box joints. Along back, along this wall behind this is plenty of room to add cabinets for hardware storage. Once again, another box joint project in a different avenue. I know I want to upgrade my tool storage to something that I can roll around, and maybe a round turntable right here, a little bit lower. We'll see about getting to that. But other than that, I think we're pretty happy with what we got with those additions we'll do in the upcoming year. Oh, and one last thing. You're going to start seeing a lot more commercials on my channel. But don't worry, they're not going to be commercials for other people's stuff. It's going to be commercials for my stuff. I'm a production woodworker. Might as well start doing stuff. And what I'm talking about is there's going to be some knick-knack items. In the past, I've done a commercial for, a comedy commercial for little coasters and stuff like that. But there's little tools that you see me using all the time in my videos, such as my smoothing plane, my grooving plane, my French squares, my marking gauges, all that kind of stuff. I'll be making commercials for them after I do a production run to make them. I have the hardware to make about 25 to 30 of these right now, and I can get the hardware to make these fairly quickly. And there's some really jerks out there that use my shop to make stuff, and they occasionally just leave it here. I'll be making commercials on these to sell them, because selling one of these on through a video would probably triple the income I make on most of my videos. And these aren't that much money. It's one of those, why waste your time selling for others when you can sell for yourself? Well, y'all be safe and have fun. And remember, it's always worth the effort to learn, create, and share with others. Be safe and have fun.